The right to offend is not some pesky little part of freedom of speech that we have to put up with. It is the heart and soul and lungs of freedom of speech. It is the coursing lifeblood of human progress. It is the instigator of liberty and modernity and science and understanding. What a laughing stock today's student leaders are, that they can so casually dismiss the right to be offensive without realizing that their lovely, enlightened lives are the gift of individuals who gave offense. Offensiveness is not just something we have to begrudgingly accept. Offensiveness is the motor of human progress.
Now broadcasting from the Right to Offend Media Studios in sunny South Florida, bringing you the latest in politics, current events, art, and pop culture. This is the Whitfield Report Live with Sam Whitfield.
But giving offense is good. In fact, it's essential.
And hello there, folks. Welcome to the Monday edition of the Whitfield Report. I am your host, Sam Whitfield, recording here Monday. We're actually on a Friday, but we're going to be posting this episode on a Monday, so welcome to the show. And, the audience has made the observation that I always seem to have authors on the program, and that would be a fair assessment. But today I actually have an author of sorts, an aspiring author and a fellow podcaster, Nathanael Hummel, who some of you may know from the Men's Adventure Fiction podcast. I love promoting those guys, and he is the other half of that podcast, also hosted by Luke Goodich, who I had on the podcast back in July. So I get to talk to the other half of the Men's Adventure Fiction podcast. So Nathaniel, welcome to the program. It's great to have you here.
Thank you so much for having me. It's such an honor. Very happy to be here to talk a little bit of men's adventure fiction and just kind of talk with you in general. I love the work that you've done with the Rider series. Very entertaining stuff. So
thanks, man. I'd love to get a blurb from you for one of the upcoming books too. So.
Oh, well, thank you so much. I would be happy to help. Yeah, very cool. I love the subtle references to James Bond, but also your own spin on espionage thrillers, and like we've talked about a little bit in passing, how you bring, it's not necessarily solely a political thriller, right? It still has those men's adventure fiction quality, and it's very entertaining, very enjoyable reads.
Well, I appreciate it. And yeah, like, I don't know how much you pay attention to politics, but like I did work a little bit in politics, so it is nothing like super exciting, but just exciting enough to where I could kind of incorporate some of my own experiences into, the realm without like generally taking one side, because like I tend to think that neither party is completely perfect, and I mean, obviously, I think you and I allied, more on some things, especially since, like, you have a gun, channel on your Discord, or I don't know if it's a strict gun channel, but it's like a gear channel that has kind of turned into a gun.
Yeah, I am a huge proponent of guns and knives and really any weapons. I think that it's a huge aspect of, it's kind of our responsibility to protect ourselves and those that we love, because in the world that we live in, you never know. I mean, I definitely support the police, and I think that they do a great service for our community most of the time, although there can be bad situations, of course. But the fact of the matter is, you never know how quick a police officer can get to you. So if you're able to protect yourself and defend yourself, then I feel like you make yourself more of an asset to society in general, as opposed to a liability. Someone who's always needing to be saved.
Absolutely. So, how did you first get involved with men's adventure fiction and just you know uh podcasting in general, because like the genre that we write it, the three of us, Luke, myself and you and others, is a pretty niche subgenre within thrillers.
Yeah.
So like how'd you get inspired to like go down this path, I guess, is the best way of putting it.
Yeah, that's a great question. I think it all started from a very young age. I remember this was the more I think about this question, because Luke and I have talked about it on the Men's Adventure Fiction podcast a handful of times, but I keep revealing these deeper layers of things that kind of inspired me to get into this genre. And one of the first things, have you ever seen the movie The Ten Commandments? It's like very old, but it
Yeah,
starts.
the Charlton Heston one, right?
Yeah, and Yul
Yeah.
Brynner. I don't know. I
Oh,
must have
yeah.
seen that when I was like 5 or 6 years old. And Yul Brynner in that movie, I know he's the bad guy, but he was the coolest person in the world to me for so long.
Yeah.
Because he's got that awesome deep voice and he's got the chiseled muscle and he has a sword in one part. So I would run around
Oh,
the
yeah.
house all the time without a shirt, carrying a sword around saying, "So let it be written, so let it be done." And so
Yeah.
kind of from there was a lot of different like interest in swords and action and medieval times and knights and stuff like that. And then I found out about cowboys and I really started enjoying those. And then I think I would watch Bonanza every day as often as I could. And I loved the Little Joe character. And I remember Little Joe in the show is left-handed because Michael Landon in real life is left-handed. And I remember being so upset that I wasn't left-handed and I had to hold my pistol with my right hand because I wanted to be just like Little Joe when I was young. So I think that all kind of came together to push me to this like interest in these, I don't know, men's adventure fiction. And they talk a lot about how kind of the noir subgenre is a very truly American concept.
Yeah.
So I don't know. There's just so many things that kind of like about men's adventure fiction and the Western and noir and kind of the Indiana Jones archetype. They all stem from very more or less American thought processes, I believe. I mean, we just did an episode on H. Rider Haggard and Alan Quatermain, and he was British, and he could be argued to be kind of the first guy who set off the treasure hunting trope, which is definitely
Yeah.
fair. And I have nothing against the British or any other group of people, but I think that like just is so ingrained. You grow up watching these cowboy movies, and you're like, oh yeah, being a cowboy
Yeah.
is what it means to be an American. And so I think
Yeah,
that was kind of locked in my mind.
Yeah, my favorite Western is, well, it's not just one Western, but it's the Dollars trilogy.
Oh yeah.
That Clint Eastwood did. From the time I was like 12, I like Clint Eastwood is like basically what I aspire, you know. I always joke, like, even now that when I grow up, I want to be Clint Eastwood. Even though I'm like even though I'm close to 30, like I still want to, be like Clint. And considering that the dude is 94, and still kicking. I mean, just that's pretty incredible. So
Yeah, we just talked about a little touch base on the Dollars trilogy in the Men's Adventure Fiction podcast. And truly, Clint Eastwood is a legend of cinema, but even more, he's made some phenomenal movies that fit right into this whole overarching theme of men's adventure fiction. And yeah, you can't beat the Dollars trilogy. They're so good.
I actually learned recently. I don't know if you're a Quentin Tarantino fan, but like I'm a major Tarantino fan, and Tarantino recently, well, not recently, but he's talked about for years about how the Dollars trilogy is his favorite series of movies. Just because like it has, they're like perfect films in his opinion. Oddly enough, though, Sergio Leone never got like nominated for an Oscar of any kind, which is kind of
Yeah.
a crime.
Yeah, seriously. He's made some incredible movies, so yeah, that's definitely a missed opportunity there.
Yeah,
Yeah, Tarantino also makes really good movies. Another one of his favorite westerns that I've heard of, that I've heard is his favorite. It's one of my favorite westerns as well. It's called Rio Bravo, and it's with John Wayne, Ricky Nelson, and Dean Martin. And if you haven't seen it,
yeah.
highly recommend it. It's so well done.
I think I saw Rio Bravo on TCM, like on Turner Classic, like
Uh-huh.
years ago. Growing up, that's a fantastic one.
Yeah. I
Um,
I remember watching it when I was a kid, and then just probably in the last year or so I revisited it. And as a kid, everything is incredible when you watch it. But to watch something as
yeah,
an adult and see it again, you're like, man, this thing holds up. This is another. It's crazy that this one didn't get any real notoriety, any any note. No one took note of it because it's a
yeah,
phenomenal film and it should be known by everybody.
yeah. Although, like Hollywood has a nasty habit of like remaking films that don't need to be like remade at all. So like,
Yeah.
I'm kind of hoping that like, people are talking like a Western revival, which has happened a little bit with like Yellowstone
Hmm.
in the 1923 series. And
Yeah.
I know that Luke and I will definitely argue because I know he's a big, fan of Spencer Dutton from 1923, but I don't know if you've seen like Yellowstone proper, but Rip
Yeah, I have.
is basically like he's the modern day kind of anti-hero,
Yeah,
kind of
he's great.
men's it. Yeah.
I think we were even talking about that in the men's adventure fiction Discord, was Rip and Casey and then Spencer, and it would be really fun to see who would win in a fight out of those three. You got some serious. Well, we already know that Rip beats Casey, but you got some men there, right? Like that's what
Yeah.
like you were saying about Clint Eastwood. I see characters like Spencer Dutton and Casey Dutton and Rip, and I'm like, man, I wish I was just like, this is something to strive for. This is what I want to be more like, because they're all really, really great characters.
I I will say this, I wouldn't necessarily want to like have to deal with the with like the hard upbringing that Rip did,
Yeah, that's very true.
although like I know one of my best friends actually, like he grew up in a very not quite as dramatic as say Rip, but he grew up in like a really bad,
Hmm.
household, and um like he's made something of himself, and he actually hadn't seen Yellowstone, so I actually turned him on to Yellowstone. I'm like, hey, I'm like, you kind of remind me of like this badass, dude.
That's awesome.
Uh,
Yeah, there's a lot of things that characters in film and books go through that you definitely don't want to have to
yeah.
go through yourself. But it's all.
Now, one thing.
Go ahead.
Oh no, yeah. One thing I am curious about is I believe you're also a filmmaker, if I'm not mistaken. So,
Yes.
how'd you get into that? If I might ask.
Yeah, that's a good topic to talk about. I grew up with some really good friends, and probably every weekend or so, or every other weekend, we would go over to each other's house after church, and we would have sword fights and airsoft guns. We just run around in the woods having a good old time together. And we came up with these, I don't know, probably like 10 characters each that we would kind of play as throughout. But we ended up settling on, and this was all very much influenced by, I think in 2009, the winter of 2009, or maybe it was like January or February of 2010. But earlier in 2009, the video game Uncharted 2 came out. And I remember none of us owned it, but my one friend had his PS3 and he downloaded the demo for it. and we played that game nonstop. It was like a 10-minute demo, and we would just finish playing and be like, all right, let's start this bad boy over again. So we both got, me and my friend Liam specifically, as well as a couple other of us, we got really inspired by that, and we really love that kind of like modern day treasure hunter who has very kind of cowboy aspects to him, a gunslinger, not afraid to get into crazy situations, and he's always going to get himself out of it, and also incredible rock climber and building climber. So we had these characters that we just built up, and it's actually the character that I write about and make films about today. His name is Nate Colt. He has various other aliases as well. So one of my older friends was in college at the time. We were probably just about to get into high school, and he said, I have a project that I have to do for school. I know you guys have these crazy stories. Do you have anything you're interested in telling? And so we came up with a crazy script, and we went out into my parents' backyard, and they had a swamp, and we were running around in the swamp shooting each other with airsoft guns and falling into the water and having these sick fist fight scenes and pretending to drown one another. And we found a diamond at the end of it, and it set off this whole kind of like story and idea in my mind. And so we did a sequel for his final project a year or so later, and that kind of cemented in my mind, like, I love stories, right? Stories kind of bring everyone together. When you meet anybody, you want to know what their story is, right? You want to hear things about them that you can relate to or hear that you never heard before, and that brings us all together. And I personally believe one of the best mediums for storytelling is the visual medium. I love movies, I love TV. So
Yeah.
And something that's really cool, that it's honestly one of the greatest feelings I've ever felt, is when I have something in my mind that I've imagined, and maybe I've imagined it playing outside with my friends, and then I put it on a page of paper. So now it's transferred to something visible. But then I go out with my friends and we shoot this thing. And to have something that's in my mind be able to be visualized and seen by other people is one of the craziest feelings that I've ever really had. It's so cool.
Yeah, I can totally relate to that. I've also written screenplays and whatnot, and in fact, Shadows of Deception, I originally wrote that as a screenplay,
Man, that's
and then
awesome.
I simply, all I did was I was like, well, I don't really have any resources to make this into a movie, so what if I turn it into a novel? And then I decided to turn it into like a serialized novella series, and that's how that whole thing came about. But I have to tell you, in addition to like publishing the actual book, which like that is pretty surreal, just to like you have it on your computer or wherever, and then to like publish it and have it in your hand is like a surreal experience. But then also to also like I had it made into an audiobook series as well, which I know you've listened. That's kind of surreal too, because even though it's my work, even though it's like my words, it is a little bit of a different medium. So to hear it like brought to life is like, wow, this is kind of crazy and cool at the same time.
Right.
So.
Like, how crazy would it be if you were out somewhere shopping or getting groceries or just on any sort of errand, and you heard somebody listening to your audiobook in the car? That would be so crazy, right?
Like I actually ran into someone like probably like 2 or 3 years ago who actually recognized me from this podcast, from an interview I did, and that was
Dude,
like,
that's so cool.
At first I thought they were kind of messing with me. I'm like, I'm like, in the grand scheme of podcasts, like, I'm a nobody, right? So like, I'm kind of like, is this person just like, screwing with me? But then but then I realized that no, they actually listen to the show, and so it was one of my cool, like, okay, this thing actually is getting traction and
Yeah, that's awesome,
whatnot.
man.
So yeah, that's amazing. So, and I believe, did you go to school for filmmaking?
Yeah, I did. I went to film school. It was a blast. It's so funny. My wife was going through her senior year of school, I think a year after me, and my brother was going through his senior year around the same time, and they were just complaining the whole time about how challenging their last semester of college was. And I was like, man, the last semester of college was maybe the most fun I've ever had in school in my whole entire life. Because the second to last semester, I have a web series on YouTube called The Adventures of Wanderers, and it follows the main character named Nate Colt, who I was just talking about earlier.
Uh-huh.
And he's an international private investigator. And I had filmed a whole season of that. And then for the final project class, basically what you had to do was you pitched to your peers who were taking the class with you an idea. And if they liked it, they would help you film it. So one guy pitched his idea, and then I pitched my idea, and two of the people were like, all right, let's do it. Let's make your web series as our final project. And it was so cool. We spent, I think, from September to like end of September, beginning of October, finalizing the script and working all that out and kind of planning shot locations and casting and all that. And then from October to November, we shot probably every 3 or 4 days. We were just cranking out this film. And then into November, we worked a little more on the video stuff, but we started editing some of the earlier stuff together. And then by December, we had all 3 episodes, all of which were right around 10 minutes long, finished and turned in. And that was really enjoyable.
That is awesome. Yeah, and even though they're 10 minutes, like I don't think most people realize like how difficult, like, you know, filmmaking can even be. So like I've done a little bit of it with my friends too, and I was
Well, that's awesome, man.
I was more of a writing major in college, but all of my classes that I took for electives were like were all film writing courses. So I essentially took like all the, you know, classes that the film students were taking, but I was getting like an English degree instead of a film making degree.
Very
so
cool.
So I really respect the process, and then my cousin is also an independent filmmaker as well.
Oh, that's
So
awesome.
yeah,
The toughest part about filmmaking, I think, is that there's a lot of just waiting around, right? And if you have a big scene where you're fighting like 4 or 5 bad guys, you have to have 4 or 5 people to play those bad guys. So I would always feel terrible making people wait around for 2 or 3 hours, and then we get to their scene, and then someone just gets shot right away, and then they're out of the scene. It's like, sorry, man. And that's the biggest limitation when you don't have a budget, is you can't pay people for their time to just sit around and hang out. But yeah,
right.
it's some of the most fun I've ever had. So, but yeah,
Or
you're right.
even
It is very challenging.
or even something like you know, you shoot someone and then they don't fall like quite the proper way that you want them to. So it's like, nope, gotta do that again. So
Yeah. Yeah, very true.
So like, do you still make films, or like, I imagine that that's a bit tougher. You do.
Yeah, it is very challenging. I used to be able to do so for the first 2 seasons. I had an episode come out every month. For the first season, it was 8 months. All of these are on YouTube. I can just look up The Adventures of Wanderers on YouTube. There's a playlist of them all. But the first season had enough headway going into it that I was able to shoot a lot, and then we were able to edit stuff out so that it was an episode every month for 8 months. And then for the next season, which was my final project, the first 3 months of 2020, we released an episode. And every year since, I've made a single episode, which is a bummer because I was over there doing once a month. I was getting an episode out. But now that life's changed and I moved away from all of my friends who are really great filmmakers. They're all in Delaware and I'm in Pennsylvania now. So it's about close to 3 hours. So it's hard to convince. It's a hard sell to be like, hey guys, do you want to come drive up to Pennsylvania for 3 hours and then film something and then go back? Or it's also hard with my schedule to make it down there all the time. But
Yeah,
there should be a new episode of The Adventures of Wanderers coming out in December timeframe.
That would be awesome. So, how has YouTube actually been for you, like producing the films? So
It
because
hasn't
like,
been. Yeah, go ahead.
well, the reason I ask is like 15 years ago, like around like 2008 or whatnot, like I know that there were a bunch of like, independent like fan films that, were like constantly showing up on YouTube. And now because of like copyrights and all that stuff, like I've heard that YouTube isn't as like friendly towards indie filmmakers as it once was. Is that true, or am I just hearing nonsense? Or
Well, it's probably true for fan films. Or the really cool thing about about the production team that I've worked with is I have friends who write music. I have friends who are able to come up with all of the kind of like just the sounds and everything. So nothing I've ever used in an episode has been copyrighted or had any other previous claim. So I've never had any issues where I was hindered because it's all original content, which has been so nice. I mean, everything, I've never had to like pay for footage or anything like that. Like all the footage we shoot together. One of my really great friends, his name is Ivan. He and I were in school together, and he's just a great videographer. So he's always ready to get the perfect shot. So it's been very, very well done for me as far as the YouTube allowing me to post stuff. I've never had any issues, luckily.
have you thought about like distributing your films like on Vimeo or something like where people can support the films? Because like obviously I would imagine that like it might not cost a lot, but it still costs a little bit to make the types of films that you are. Or is this just a complete hobby at this point?
It would be cool to make money off of them. I just think, well, that's what's tough is you get into this kind of like back and forth where it's like, oh, if we had more money, we could make better videos. But then it's like the videos that I have now, I don't think they're pretty high quality for having no budget, but they're not the greatest things. You're not going to watch it and be like, wow, this is like John Wick or Mission Impossible. You're going to be like, oh, this is a guy and his friends filming a movie, but it's like still got good bones. But so that's what's kind of tough is like, I don't know if I want to ask people to pay for something that I don't know is like, if it's high quality enough for that. But that is a good idea that I haven't really entertained. But now that you've got me thinking about it, I like where your head's at.
I think there is a space really for indie filmmakers, even if it's not like a large amount of money. Like obviously, I don't think we're going to be going up against like Paramount or HBO or anything anytime soon.
Yeah.
But I do think that if you're really passionate about filmmaking or writing or really anything, like there are just so many more avenues to like monetize stuff if you want, especially like now. Compared to like,
very cool.
What do you think of AI in regards to filmmaking specifically? There's a lot of buzz about that in the film industry. So
it's so interesting that up until this year, I had no idea how capable AI was. And it never, even when like, maybe it was 2023 when everybody started having the AI photos and posting those on Instagram and the AI trend really took off. I never even kind of like clicked in my mind that people could use that for filmmaking purposes. And then it probably wasn't until I saw the deep fake Tom Cruise. I don't know if you've seen his posts going around.
Yeah, that was wild.
Yeah, crazy. It's just exactly like Tom Cruise. They did a really good job getting an actor who can do a pretty good job of having his motions and his mannerisms, but then everything else is just, I don't know, dubbed over with AI, which is very impressive. As far as in film, it's tough. And I think it's tough too, having a foot in the film camp, but also a foot in the writing camp. It's like, there's a reason that, and part of the struggle of being a creative person who loves to write and loves to make stories come to life, there are so many people who are really, really good at telling stories that never get noticed because of a bad break. Like, they just don't have the proper luck. Things don't fall into place. I mean, who's to say how many things had to happen for Brad Pitt, Tom Cruise, George Clooney, Chris Pratt? Like, all these things came together, and now they're these faces that we see in our household names. And it's crazy that, like, I don't know, Jimmy Joe Meeker from Seattle didn't make it, but he's just as good an actor as them. So I think in a field that's already saturated with such good talent that doesn't even get the chance to shine, it doesn't make a lot of sense for me to rely on artificial intelligence when we already have so many incredible humans that aren't even getting a chance to do it. Does that make sense?
Yeah, completely. And I do think, like, as far as acting goes, and I would say the same for like writing. Like, I'm actually a huge proponent of using AI as like a tool, and there seems to be this like misunderstanding in the writing community that like there are people who, there are authors who like don't think you should use AI at all under any circumstances because they think it's somehow like cheating, and I don't think they really like understand at this point that like AI, like, if you tell it to just generate a story, it'll do something that like maybe a 4-year-old can like come up with, like, and that's like with the newest model. Like, it's not going to come up with like something like super creative, but if I give it my whole manuscript or something, and I say, hey, like, I want to polish this scene specifically, or I want to polish this part, and then I put that in, it'll, like, basically the more input the user has for these types of things, the better it is. So like, in my mind, it's not like cheating. It's the equivalent of basically like a photographer using Photoshop to improve something, basically, or like a
Right.
filmmaker using Final Cut,
Right. Well, that's what I was going to say. There's so many things. I don't know if you've used Photoshop or InDesign or any of those kind of Adobe suites, but when you're using those to manipulate your photos, you are doing it, but it is definitely, the actual edits are surely influenced by AI, like the auto generative fill, which has been around for years now, at least 4 years, 5 years since I graduated, or since I went to college and I learned about it. Like, that's taking the stuff and it's automatically adding a background, right? And that's doing that by artificial intelligence to some degree. So I would agree that it is a tool that we can use, but I don't think, like you were just saying, like, it's something that has to be controlled by the user. It's not something that we can rely on as a crutch. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And that's particularly how I use AI. Like, another way I use it is like, if I'm writing a story or something, like, I'll have like, I don't do outlines, like, in the grand scheme of things. I'm more of a pantser, but I always do have like a brief outline.
Right.
And sometimes, like, I'll know that I want my character to get from point A to point B in the story, but I don't know how I want them to do it. So if I ask, Chat GPT, like, how would this character get from point A to
Yeah.
point B? Sometimes it'll come up with like a great answer, sometimes it'll give me like multiple choice.
Yeah, right.
And then, sometimes it's like, okay, I like this. I want to expand on this idea, or no, I don't like any of these. And then
Yeah.
like and then I'll just, prompt it with something else. But like, yeah, I think, it's a tool. Same thing with like even generative AI. Like, the more descriptive you can be with that, like, the better it'll be. Like, that's, and the way I see generative images is it's basically me just going up to like a painter or the equivalent of it and saying, I want this type of image, for my cover or something like that. So,
Yeah.
which, funny enough, that's actually how I bumped into Luke and you initially. Was
Yeah.
Luke actually found one of my AI like pulp art images
Oh,
that
that's
I
awesome.
posted, and he started liking like a lot, and I'm like, who is this guy? So I took it out, and I'm like, finally there's like another author who's like my age,
That's
who's
awesome.
like writing in this thriller genre. So
Yeah, Luke is a great dude. He is, first of all,
yeah.
an incredible man, and then second of all, just a really good person at building a community. I mean, what he's done with his Instagram and the way that he's able to connect with his followers and people who are passionate about this genre is unstoppable. I mean, he's just a force for good in this
Yeah.
genre and community.
Yeah. How did you two connect? Do you two know each other IRL, or how did
But
that come
we've
about?
honestly asked each other this so many times because the stars aligned for us to meet each other and to have the opportunity to collaborate like we have been. I think it must have been, he has really great ads. I don't know if they ever pop up for you when you're on Instagram, but maybe once or twice a week I'll see one, and it's usually, recently it's been about Vipers and Red Rocks, which is his newest book release, which is very good read. Highly recommended. It's on Amazon. And so I must have seen one of those.
I actually have my copy of Vipers actually right here on.
Yeah, me too, dude.
You've got the advanced reader copy there.
And
I've got the
I'm dual wielding Luke Goodish Vipers and Red Rocks books, baby.
Nice. Yeah, I think Zach James told me he was gonna send me an advanced copy of Persona non Grata, which I'm excited for.
Yeah,
so.
man. Persona non grata is very cool. The cover alone is enough to suck you in. But yeah, I think so. I saw one of Luke's Instagram story post advertisements, and I ended up looking at his page, and it's just such a cool page. If you're a fan of thrillers, of westerns, if you're a thriller of just being a man, you're gonna love that page. It's so good. I ended up finding it and following him, and he posts really good videos and photos that inspire discussion. And I think that's kind of what his heart is for, is pulling more people, more readers into this genre, because like you said, this is a niche little world we find ourselves in. And the more people that can see it, I mean, once, years ago, you would go to any bookstore and there was all of these pulp magazines, the dime novels, the art was just so perfect, and it would literally grab you by your shirt and smack you in the face with an exciting story that you wanted to read. And so I think Luke's Instagram has done a really, really good job of kind of having the same effect. And that's what pulled me in, and that's why I'm here right now.
He it's it's very interesting because I think he's good for getting the the younger demographic into this too.
Yeah, very true.
The funny thing is Luke and I are actually we're a year apart. I'm 1 year older than he is, but
Nice.
still it's like it's nice because in the I have lots of friends who are in the indie author community, and I love them all, but like most of them are like ranging from like their like early 40s to like 70 plus,
Mm-hmm.
which is awesome, but like as I told Luke, like most of the time I feel like I'm like the kid sitting at the grown-ups table,
Yeah.
you know, in the thriller, verse. So it's nice to
Right.
see, so you and him who, none of us are kids per se, but like we're we're peers
Right.
more or less. So
Yeah.
that's been
100%.
great.
Yeah, man, it's been really good getting to know you too. It's so cool seeing your stories come to life. And like you said, I listened to the audiobooks and I very much enjoy them. I was wondering, like, I know you said that you're a really big fan of James Bond, but I was curious who kind of your inspiration is for the Ryder character and this whole world that you've built around him.
So great question. So the well, John Ryder. So the character has gone through several evolutions. When I first moved to Florida, I'm originally from Colorado.
Oh, cool.
But then after high school, I moved to Florida, and I took a gap year in between high school and college to establish residency.
Mm-hmm.
So that I could pay in-state tuition
Very smart.
rates, and yeah. So during that time, like I was, trying to figure out like stuff to do, and I had read a few short stories in high school, but nothing like super serious. And so I had recently discovered Vince Flynn, the late
Nice.
author. I don't know if you've read any of his work, but he he was a big inspiration. So I decided to write this story called American Instinct, and I
Very cool.
based my character, the initial character Vince Ludlum, off of him and Robert Ludlum, and
Very cool.
and admittedly, like it's pretty like mediocre to bad. Like
Mm-hmm.
I was 19, and I basically just like wrote a first draft and then like published it on Amazon. And I
Gotcha.
actually I sold a few copies, surprisingly,
That's
on
awesome.
Kindle. But like I didn't know what I was doing
Mm-hmm.
really, and but I enjoyed it. But then I started college, and as you will know, once you get started with school, your hobbies kind of take a backside, especially like when you're a writing major, like I am. Like the last thing you want to do, as much as I love writing, the last thing you want to do is like spend another 4 hours, staring at like a computer screen for your hobbies, after you just got done writing like a term paper or something. Um, so I really put like writing, um, on hold for like a good like 5 to 6 years while I was in college.
Mm-hmm.
But during that time, I lo- I was in a men's Bible study, kind of like slash counseling thing,
Mm-hmm.
through student ministry. And during that time, like I started meeting like all these veterans that had been like in Iraq and in Afghanistan, um, and that they were they had been in like the military, for a lot of their life, and they were, they had just gotten out, and a lot of them were going to college, again, or maybe for the first time to find out what they wanted to do in the civilian side. And one of them was named John Ryder, and I never got close to him really, but like the guy was just kind of like, he was a guy who didn't really say much, but like just his presence was like really, I don't really know how to describe it, but he just had like he had a confidence about him, but also kind of like a don't fuck with me
Right.
type of attitude.
Yeah, kind of like Clint
That was
Eastwood,
just,
right?
yeah. And so like I never really got to know him, but like he he really kind of imprinted on me. And then like hearing some of the other experiences from some of my other veteran friends who I met during that time, like when I finally got back to kind of writing the series, I'm like, okay, I'm just gonna kind of start this over from the beginning and do a redo. And so basically like I just kind of made John Ryder and based him off a lot of like veteran stories that like I'd heard from like other people I'd met, and of course from like head on some of the stuff that I'd like watched online and like Band of Brothers
Yeah.
and stuff like that. So just kind of an amalgamation. And also, like, sorry to be so long-winded, but like because of all my like film
No, not at
writing
all.
classes in college, like my ability to write characters like better, that came into focus more too, like how to properly develop a character.
Yeah.
Which I think is, it's really important if you're an author, especially, and and a filmmaker too.
Right.
So that's kind of my long-winded answer about John Ryder.
Oh no,
So
that was a great answer, man. I didn't think it was long-winded at all. It was very cool. That's so cool to have like real experience with veterans and military members and use that as kind of your base to write this very interesting character that you've developed. So,
yeah,
really cool.
I mean, like, and like that's the other thing too is, like I feel like there are a lot of veterans who I think should maybe tell their story, but for whatever reason, they're not good writers or they just
Right.
don't want to. So
Yeah.
to be able, even though it is fiction, to kind of be able to bring some of these themes, to the forefront, like, one of the things that was really kind of, good for me was like, writer deals with post-traumatic stress disorder in some instances. And in Hollywood, it's always made up of like it's always like a big dramatic thing, like,
Yeah.
the main character will have like a panic attack like in the middle of like a firefight, and it'll cripple him or something like that. Well, like I've talked to veterans and they'll be like, that's not how PTSD works.
Right.
It's not always like a a seizure like inducing event, or it's not always a sheer panic attack. Sometimes it's like you'll see something and it'll just remind you of Afghanistan, and then you'll be right back
Yeah.
wherever you are. So I was able to put that in, and because I had that knowledge, like I've actually had veterans be like, wow, you're one of the few people who actually like writes somewhat realistic like interpretations of how PTSD is, which it sucks that we have to that is a thing that vets have to deal with,
Yeah.
but
Crazy.
at least I can offer some authenticity for that type of
Right.
thing,
And
or at
that's
least I
so,
try to.
yeah, that's so honoring to them because, like you said, like they're actually telling you that you got it right. That's really cool.
Yeah.
That's awesome to bring to life.
So, question for you now. I mean, So, in my mind, like, you've already written a lot because, you've done screenwriting, which is, that's tough in of itself, but, you're transitioning to, like, writing stories and potentially writing books. Like, how has that been? And has that been challenging, or what has your experience been so far?
That's a great food for thought there with that question. I think it's honestly been very cathartic. And I've talked with Luke about this a lot, and it's part of the reason why I enjoy the podcast so much, is because for the longest time I had this outlet for this passion where I would play outside with my friends and we just tell these crazy stories together. But now that we're grown up, we never do that anymore. And in fact, I
Yeah.
hardly see a lot of the people that I grew up with because we all live in different states now.
Yeah, yeah.
So, and that would be my favorite thing to do, even by myself as a kid. My parents had 14 acres in the woods, and there was several outbuildings. So, in my free time, until I was embarrassingly old, I would run around outside, jumping on the buildings and diving off them, and doing combat rolls and whipping around my swords and my airsoft guns and having a good old time. So now
Nice.
to be writing almost every day, 4 or 5 days of the week, it really kind of feels like I'm back. Luke's always talking about that inner kid inside of us who loves this stuff. And
Yeah.
it's so, I don't even feel like he's inside of me. I just feel like it's me. Like, I love men's adventure fiction. I love reading Louis L'Amour, reading great authors like yourself and Luke, Robert E. Howard. The list goes on and on. Stephen Marlowe is one of my personal favorites, probably my favorite author of all time. So to be able to kind of tell these own stories in my own way, I haven't found it very challenging. I'm in the process right now. My goal is to write so the reason I made the character Nate Colt a private investigator is because I felt like that opens you up to a lot of avenues for stories
Yeah.
taking different genre approaches almost. So if you're good at finding people and solving crimes, you're probably good at finding treasure and solving old mysteries. And if you're good at finding people and fighting these people when you're finding the treasures and fighting crime, you're probably good at fighting bad guys in all their various different ways. So I think that if done properly, you can set up a private investigator to go on treasure hunts, to be hired by the Central Intelligence Agency when they can't send their own agent in and they need a little more deniability. So right now I've been working on 2 short stories of a kind of a crime noir mafia sort of feeling, one of which is actually posted on Luke's website, narrative-compass.com. It's called You're Welcome, Ralph. So if you watch this interview and you're interested about what I write, you can check that out on his website.
Yeah.
And then the other one I haven't written yet. And then I have 2 treasure hunting stories that are both finished. They're all kind of pushing the long end of short story almost into novella range. And then I want to do 2 kind of spy fiction scenarios. And then once I have that 6 short story collection, I want to look to get it published or possibly self-published.
That sounds awesome. So,
It's very fun.
I mean, and I kind of feel the same way. Like, I grew up, I was in Boy Scouts, and so, like, my buddies and I, we would always go on campouts and then play like
Yeah, man.
something like that. And yeah, same thing. I mean, like, I'm now I write because at almost 30, like, I can't, like, I've got stuff to do. I can't, literally be like, playing outside, but it's nice to kind of project some of that stuff into my characters too.
Yeah.
So yeah, and I think Luke's right about still feeding that inner kid, and
100%. Yeah.
So
Well, and you think about it, when you're a kid, there's, even if you have a bad childhood, to some degree, there's a little bit of innocence that you still can kind of hold on to. and
Yeah.
life is easier than when you have to provide for yourself. So to have that freedom to let your mind roam into these realms of imagination that are so unattainable is truly an incredible gift. And if you're able to carry that into your adulthood, I mean, there's a Frank Sinatra song called Young at Heart that talks just about this
Yep.
sort of thing. But it's like, if you can kind of keep that childlike wonder at the world around us and then use that to inspire and carry out these stories that you loved, well, first of all, reading and watching as kids, then loved playing outside with your friends making these stories, it'll definitely do incredible things for your mental health, I think.
I also think that there's something incredibly powerful about being able to talk about like complex and often adult themes also
Mm-hmm.
in addressing them in fiction in a way that you might not be able to necessarily in real life or just doing like
Yeah.
a straight up commentary. I don't know, you mentioned that you like the noir genre. I do too.
Mm-hmm.
One of my favorite authors is James Ellroy, who he wrote the LA Quartet. I don't know if you've ever seen the movie LA Confidential.
Yeah.
But that movie is based off of his novel of the same name.
Oh, very cool.
And yeah, he writes about Hollywood and kind of, it all takes place during like the 30s and 40s, and
Mm-hmm.
He writes about how like, hey, everyone has the perception that like America was innocent and wholesome, during like the 40s and 50s, but look at like all this scuttlebutt that's happening in Hollywood. Like it's
Yeah.
he says, well, no, I'm a Christian, and like I'm not a cynic, but I like to point out that, hey, like the world was not as innocent during these time periods as we like to think
Right.
they were. There was a lot of people have always been good, but people have also always been self-interested and whatnot. So
Right.
he dives into human nature and does character studies of people.
Well, I think that was something that you did really well with the John Ryder books. Was it almost seemed like it was snatched right from the front page of the news, It was so well done where it's like this fictional telling, but unfortunately it doesn't seem like it is fictional, right? Like, unfortunately, fortunately, well, you did such a good job of handling that. But like reading it was like, wow, this is like real almost, So I think you did a great job of talking about, like you said, there's things that you can't talk about the same way that you can in a novel.
Yeah.
You did such a good job of utilizing
well,
that.
and thank you for that. I have a funny story about that. I actually told Luke James this story. The just recently. So this is the second time that folks will be hearing this. So my latest book, The Dogs of War, deals with the aftermath of a presidential assassination attempt, because in my fictional universe, like the president survives an assassination attempt, and so at the end of the Fourth Estate, and I wrote that book back in February,
Mm-hmm.
and then I basically I was already writing kind of the Dogs of War, during that time too. So I had this all planned out, and I had it like submitted to Amazon and like ready to publish, and the Dogs of War, and then like the weekends before it was going to come out, that was when Trump got shot.
That's crazy.
And so like a couple of my beta readers were like, holy shit, you predicted this. And I'm like, no. I'm like, you know, I wrote this back in February, like,
Yeah,
how
that's
did I know?
crazy, man.
So like I was actually like debating on whether or not to pull it, and so I talked to a few like author friends, and they were like, no, like I think it'll be fine. I think if he had actually like been killed, I think that might have been like a different story. But if
Yeah.
anything, him surviving the assassination attempt will actually like maybe help book sales. And
Yeah, that's
so,
crazy.
and so yeah,
Yeah, dude, what are the chances? You're a prophet
yeah.
over here. That's wild, man.
Well, hopefully not. So, I, although maybe if I am, maybe then I need to drastically change the story so everything will work out. So, but doing the Men's Adventure Fiction podcast been for you?
Man, it's an absolute blast. Every time, I remember the first time we were going to record, I was like nervous. I was thinking like, what are we going to talk about? What am I going to do? And then 5 minutes in, I was like, oh my gosh, this is the coolest thing ever. I love talking about this genre. I love having characters that you read about, and as you read them, you just feel like man, I need to be a better man. I need to be more prepared for situations that I find myself in. I need to be in better shape. It's time to go do some push-ups. Like, they just inspire you to strive to be better.
Yeah.
So thinking about that and talking about that, and that's part of the reason why we're at the end of every episode, we have been doing the gear, where we talk about pieces of gear that would be taken on an adventure in men's adventure fiction. And I think that that's like really cool because it gives this like genre and this whole kind of storytelling aspect more of a real life. Like, these are things, hands-on things that I can do to be more
Yeah.
like these heroes that we love and read about. So yeah, just getting, and Luke and I always say, like, if there was 2 subscribers and no comments, we would be there every week to video call and talk about men's adventure fiction, because we end up having just the best time ever. So yeah.
It's been wild that as an audience member to like listen and watch the thing and just how good, like, had you ever done a podcast before, like recording wise? Like,
No, I have
wow,
not.
that's impressive. I mean, I've been
Thank you.
podcasting since I was 14. So like I'm so like I've been at podcasting for a while, but like I love hearing new shows just in general, and like seeing how like newer podcasters like always approach it. And you have the right idea. Like you like to it seems to me like you love doing the show just for the heck of it.
Yeah.
And those are always the most successful podcasts, in my opinion. I know people who they get into podcasting because they think they're going to monetize it overnight, and that they're going to be the next Joe Rogan,
Right.
and that's never how it works. Like,
Right.
and then they quit after 5 episodes because they think that like they've failed or something like that. But no, you guys have done awesome. So
Well, thank you so much. We really appreciate the support. And like I
yeah.
said, I'm honored to even be on here. If you told me 6 weeks ago that I would be on the Whitfield Report, I would be like, what? Why? What have I done?
Well, I'm interested, I love talking to people and I appreciate the support from, the community as well. So it's been great to kind of pivot from strictly talking politics all the time to now like I'm talking to authors and like, actors and other stuff too. So it's been wild. So
yeah, man. It's a lot of fun. It's cool. It's cool seeing just how many people. Oh, that's what I said about Luke. Luke is the community builder, man. Like, I don't think I ever would have met you if it wasn't for Luke. But through him, through his Instagram, and now through the Men's Adventure Fiction podcast, there are so many people that I'm meeting, and this community is building into this great thing where, like, it's iron sharpening iron, right? We have a bunch of
Yeah.
individuals who are passionate about this craft and about this genre and just about talking to each other and getting to know each other and building each other into better individuals. And it's very refreshing and very enjoyable to be a part of.
Yeah, well, for me too, like that's how the podcasting community used to be when I first started, because like I was podcasting like at a time when no one really knew what podcasting was.
Man, that's
and
awesome.
So it was a lot more like there were like bigger names, of course, but there were like a lot more smaller, communities. So it was nice to be part of those. And then like as the format got like more recognition, like people started to kind of split off and do their own thing, and it became, I mean, I don't want to say like it's necessarily like lost its, glamour, because like there are still like a lot of great, podcasts out there. But it's changed, and I feel like, the men's adventure fiction community, it kind of reminds me of like, this is that same like intimate community where like iron is sharpening iron, and
yeah, man,
like, it's awesome. So
yeah, it is. And I'm so happy to be a small part of it. So
who like, so you guys had a few guests so far. Like, what do you like best? Do you just like, do you like having conversations, or do you like interviews the best, or what have been some of your best experiences so far with podcasting?
I've really enjoyed having the guests on, and I've really enjoyed just getting to talk with Luke. Our goal when we have guests is not to kind of have it as more of like an interview, but it's almost more like we want to have people on who are kind of like, this is their niche thing. So when we were doing the Alan Quartermain episode, Terrence Lehue from the Suit Up podcast is a huge H. Rider Haggard fan. And so it was like, when we think Alan Quartermain, it makes sense that we'd have him on, because this is kind of one of his specialties of the craft. So we don't want it to necessarily seem like a new guest, as opposed to this is a third host for the episode. So it's been so cool getting to have people on and find out these things that they're passionate about. And that's kind of what happens every episode with Luke too. The more that and you asked, did Luke and I know each other in real life? We have never met in person at all. We only known each other through Instagram. So everyone's always talking about how horrible social media is, but this is an example of good things coming from it.
Yeah.
It's a great tool. Once again, it's another tool that we can utilize, but you got to make sure you control it and don't let it control you.
One of my friends, Jason Veal, who I actually had on the podcast last week. I think you might have seen one of my reels on Instagram. But I've known him for like I think 12 years at this point, and we met on Twitter of all places, and
that's awesome.
I was part of like a podcast network with him, and we were both in high school when we first met, and now like, he's like married, and like he's expecting his first kid, and like we were reminiscing the other night, like, geez, like you and I were kids when when we started this, and now, now you're having a kid, and hopefully I'll have a kid one day, and
That's so
you
awesome.
know, and so now we were also because like now we talk about like we still talk about like stuff we love, but we also talk about stuff like the economy and taxes and stuff that like
Yeah, right.
that
The
we have to
curse
worry
of
about
growing
now
old.
as so stuff like that. So yeah, I mean this community has I mean that's the other thing is social media can be a a benefit too as far as like connecting people with each other.
Yeah,
It
for
it can
sure.
be toxic, but like only if you let it be
Right.
toxic. So um
Yeah,
and
couldn't agree more.
I haven't actually watched your interview with Terrence, but I'm looking forward to getting around to that one, and I'm like, oh wow, you got him. He's I know he's a big name, so
Yeah,
um
well, it was a lot of fun getting to talk with him. I think we were talking because he wanted to have us on the Suit Up podcast, which we were on, and we talked about the King Solomon's Mines 1985 movie,
yeah
which is an absolute riot. That episode was pretty funny, but it was all to talk about his book, One Man's Treasure, which came out, I think, September 3rd, which was just past Monday. And so then we were like, maybe we should do a deep dive on Rider Haggard and Alan Quarterman. He's like, I love that guy. I've got like an 8-book collection, and there's only 9 books, and I have 8 of the 9, and then these like beautiful cover stories of Alan Quartermain. So we're like, all right, you're hired. We got
yeah
to get you on the show. So that episode was very fun. It was really cool to take a deep dive into kind of. He's almost like the godfather of adventure heroes to some degree, especially this
yeah
modern like treasure hunter character.
yeah. I discovered Terrence because of my friend Eric Bishop, who like he writes like political thrills. He's kind of like the he's one of the big names like as far as indie publishing goes. He wrote
Very cool.
the
Cool.
I like I've had him on for like all through his books, and he actually when he came out with his latest book Breach of Trust, he actually asked me to like if he could come on my show on his launch day
Well, that's
for the
so
book, and
cool.
I'm like hell yeah, like come on. And so it was great to
That's
have him
awesome,
on.
man.
So and then just to like the other thing that's been great for me is like I've interviewed like a lot of these authors, and then they're like, hey, if you need me to look over something for you, let me know. And
That's so cool.
like that's been great too.
Yeah, man.
So it's just
That's awesome.
to have all these connections. Let's see. I have a few other I know I have a few other topics to cover. Oh, any guests that you want to get on in the future for the
There's as soon as we posted our first video, I think maybe it was further down the line, but Charles F. Millhouse, who writes the Captain Hawkland stories, he
yeah.
posted it on his Facebook. All the comments were like, "Are they accepting guests? How can I be on the podcast?" So there's a lot of people who have interest in being on it, and it's almost overwhelming the number of people who are interested. But we haven't discussed too in depth who we're interested in having on. I'm sure that we'll work out a list. It would be nice to do maybe a guest once a month or 2 times a month or something like that. But we'll see.
Well, you guys have like a really like I honestly love the episodes. Like I love guest episodes, but I also love the episodes of just you two chatting with each other. And
Yeah,
like I don't
it's a lot
know,
of fun.
do you and Luke talk a lot like offline, or is it mainly like on the show? Or
Well, we probably
um,
text back and forth every day. And then
that's
we've been
awesome.
we've been doing kind of like after we record, we'll do another Zoom call and kind of debrief and talk about how things are going and what kind of episode topics we want to look for in the future and stuff like that. So it's been really cool. That's what I was saying. It's like I had no idea that when I followed him by seeing his ad on Instagram, that it was going to become this beginning of a
Yeah,
beautiful friendship. So here we are months later, and
yeah, that
I talk to him every day.
yeah that yeah that's wild because like I had never seen like any of his like sponsored content, but like he follows like a lot of the same people that I follow,
Yeah,
and so like the fact that he found me and like like my stuff was like pretty impressive, especially like once I figured out like how well connected he
yeah, man,
was. So
he's such a cool dude. I could talk
yeah,
about Luke all day. He's great.
I well yeah I love him, and like my childhood best friend's name is also named Luke. So
That's
like I
funny. Yeah, you guys have some serious connections going on there.
and so yeah like in the Luke that I've known in my best friend Luke, like I've known him since kindergarten.
Well,
So
that's awesome, man.
yeah, um and yeah I've told, and yeah, like I've also told him about like Luke's writings, like our Luke's writings, and he's like, that's awesome. So,
Yeah,
but
yeah, he's a such a good writer. I remember I followed him, and then he posted about every other week he'll drop a new Noah Redford chapter. And I remember reading the first one, and I was like, man, this is what I'm talking about. This is exactly what modern fiction needs, is a semi or a bi-weekly release of an incredible short story that's got that same pulp energy and has that same kind of, well, the pulp pace of writing. So it comes out on a timeline, and it's very well written, and then super fast paced writing, really really enjoyable stories. And I was like,
uh,
yeah, this dude's
okay.
awesome.
Thanks for reminding me that was gonna be my next topic. So, are you into like comic books or anything like that? Um,
I definitely am into them to some degree. I haven't read a ton, but I love comics, and I have several that are kind of like linchpins. I really enjoy
yeah,
Nick Fury and the Punisher, and I actually have a early print copy of the Indiana Jones comic books that came out right around when Raiders of the Lost Ark came out. And that's really cool.
yeah. Yeah, the reason I ask is because like I feel like so I actually collect comics. I don't really collect them anymore, but like I
That's
used
so
to
cool.
when I was, a kid and even like into high school, even before the Marvel movies um really became a thing and took off, but like that's actually I found like you know, dime novels, or men's adventure
Yeah.
novels is like I was like, man, it's like really cool that like comic books are serialized like
Uh huh.
this. Like I wish actual books would, do the same thing. And then I found like, oh well there are these things called pulp novels and
Yeah, man.
and so that's like the other thing. It's like I can't draw to save my life. And so like but I can tell a story, and so to be able to you know, write shorter form content and then like publish it is like that's amazing.
Yeah.
So
Yeah. Very cool.
and also like I'm glad that novellas are kind of coming back because as much as I love the internet, there's something like reading a physical book that is just like I don't know, still like awesome.
Yeah.
So
Yeah. There's nothing like paper. Nothing
yeah.
like.
So I guess what's next for you as far as writing
Yeah.
and whatnot.
Um. Well, I'm almost finished that short story collection I was talking about, and then I I've only ever the most words I've ever written in any sort of um, book form was 24,000 words, which is like kind of right in the middle of novella length, I believe.
Yeah.
And so I was wondering, I had this idea for a short, and I just started writing it one day, and then I was thinking, like, I wonder if I could push this further than anything I've written before. And I just kept writing it, and the story kept kind of unfolding before my eyes. And I'm now sitting at, I think, 51,000 words. So that's getting close to novel length, if not already there. So I'm working on that.
Yeah.
It's a pretty interesting story. It's with the same Nate Colt character, and I usually don't have an outline, but I wrote the first half of this story, and I had no idea where I was going to take the second half because I kind of painted myself into a corner. So I really had to spend a lot of time thinking and working out and kind of making an outline to understand where I wanted to take the story. And now I'm getting close to the end, and as the twists and turns that have happened as I've written it have surprised me. So
Yeah.
hopefully it's able to surprise the reader as well whenever it does get released to the public. But
Yeah.
that's what I've been working on a lot.
It's interesting that you say that, because like you and I are very kind of similar that way. So like I have an overarching like idea of like where I want the Shadows of Deception story to like go. But like things change and whatnot, obviously. But like I don't really focus on word counts that much.
Mm-hmm.
Like specifically, I know there are some authors who are like, I'm gonna write 100. I'm gonna try and write for like 60,000 words or something. And like if you can do that type of thing where like you have goals, that's like great. But I'm kind of like I'm more like focused on the story like than I am the word count.
Right.
So like and maybe it's just like because of college, but like um like after hearing like about word count requirements so much in school, like I just got like PTSD. Like I don't care like word counts. I just want to focus on like the story. And like if if it winds up being like 50,000, then that's great. If not, though, that's fine. So generally, like
Yeah.
what I'll do is like I'll write the story, and then like if I feel like I get to a point where like I'm done, I'm
Mm-hmm.
not gonna like really push myself. Or if I feel like it, or if I feel like it's a good stopping point for the novella, that's when I'll stop and then expand on something else in the next novella. So it's
Yeah, that
been
makes a lot of sense.
yeah, it's been interesting to do it that way. And then also like like one of the things that has been interesting is like getting reader feedback, not just from like beta readers, but just like readers in general. Or like I remember there was one like villain character that, like I killed off at like the end of my first like novella, and people were like, hey, I really like that character. And I'm like crap, well I can't bring him back because he got
Yeah.
like a bullet to the head. But like what if I gave him like a twin brother who like also happens to be like evil or something like
Yeah,
that.
nice.
And so just like stuff like that, or just like expanding on like other themes that like readers want like brought up, like, so that's been interesting as well. So just to get like reader feedback.
Yeah, that's really cool.
So and the other thing that I find fascinating about you is like you're the only one I know who's like what are you 28?
26.
Wow, 26. So you're the only one I know in their mid-20s who's like into like pipes and cigars. So,
Yes.
which is
Big fan of
interesting.
tobacco that you don't inhale.
that's
Yeah.
good. So
One day I was just and that's what I talked about this on the Men's Adventure Fiction podcast. I was saying that when you kind of think of like classic adventures, you think of them planning like the next heist, the next caper, the next expedition, the next treasure hunt. I always imagine them sitting in a back room of some sort of bar, and maybe it's like the fanciest bar you've ever seen in 5-star hotel with black tie events going on all the time, or it's in the middle of Indonesia and it's
yeah,
just a dive bar and there's like bar fights going on all the time. But in the back room, there's a group of 4 or 5 or 6, 3 men, and they're sitting around a table. Well, maybe there's some
yeah,
cards, maybe there's some guns, but there's a map or there's schematics, and they're all smoking something. And there's like a smoky back room. One guy's got a pipe, one guy's got a cigar, the other guy's got cigarettes, the other dude's just drinking, and it's just like such a classic aspect. So every time I smoke a pipe or a cigar, I feel like I'm pulled into this great
yeah.
history of men
Do
going
you
on
ever?
adventures.
Do you ever?
Yeah, I talked about this too on the Men's Adventure Fiction podcast, the first episode. A very great writer and editor. His name is Frank Theodat. He's the editor of the Pulp, Pipe, and Poetry
Yeah,
Substack e-magazine. Really
yeah,
cool dude. But he wrote an article called The Pulp Work Ethic, and I cannot praise that article enough. It kind of highlighted these famous authors from the pulp times and how they just wrote. They didn't let anything get in their way. They just pushed out words, and they had to do it on a time limit, right? Like this is how they made their bread money, right? So
yeah,
they've got maybe 3 days to write a 12,000 word story, and they just get it done. And they probably did 2 or 3 of them and sent them out to other publishers. So after reading that, I read that sitting in my shed smoking a pipe because I have a cigar smoke lounge out there. And after I read that, I literally sat
fun.
down, and for the next 2 or 3 hours, I cranked out the 1,800 words that became "You're Welcome, Ralph," all in one sitting, just smoking on that pipe. I think at one point I was getting so sucked into the story, I just put the pipe down and I was just writing out there by myself.
Yeah, that's awesome.
Yeah,
Yeah, the
go ahead.
the only time I don't generally like cigarettes, but the only time I ever really smoked cigarettes was when I was in college and I had to like finish a term paper, and
Nice.
there's something I like even smoking like a cigarette that I think it might be the nicotine hit, but like
Yeah.
you just get like in the zone and like laser focused, or
Yeah, locked in. Very true,
so
very true. Well, that's what I believe Sherlock Holmes said. This is a 3-pipe problem, or something to that effect, which means they had to
yeah.
smoke 3 bowls of pipe tobacco to hone in on solving the mystery.
Yeah, although like to be honest, like that's also like I don't know if you drink at all, but like I also find like that's why I do like scotch too, is like sometimes like if I just need to like brainstorm or something, like I'll
That's
grab
very
like
cool.
either scotch or a beer or something, and I'll just like ponder like how do I have John Ryder like get out of this problem, or something like that.
Well, and that's what's so cool about these things when they're obviously you don't want to be like drinking like a fish, or I don't want to be smoking a
Right.
pipe every waking minute of my life. So done in moderation. But when I sit out there and I'm smoking a pipe, it forces me to slow down, and it allows me to kind of, like you said, the nicotine definitely helps, but also just sitting by yourself gives you this time to think and time to reflect and time to kind of like put everything on the table in front of you and really think through your next steps. And there's nothing like it to have that time to yourself where you can really kind of hone in on what exactly you're looking for.
Yeah, no, that's very true. Like, people ask me all the time, like, how can you stand to be like in your room all the time, like, just like, writing, like, doesn't it get lonely or something? And it's like, well, no, like, I feel like I'm, I feel like I'm in my world with my characters, and they're like they're revealing things to me,
Mm-hmm.
or something like that. Like,
Yeah, for sure.
I don't like, unless you're a writer, like, very few people get it, I feel like. So
Yeah, like we talked about in the beginning, there's nothing like seeing what's in your mind come to life on a page.
yeah. So, well, any other topics that you have, or shall we wrap it up?
I think we've covered so much, man. I really appreciate the opportunity to be on here and get to chat with you and get to know you even a little better. So thank you so much, my
Oh,
friend.
absolutely. I'd love to have you back on at some point. Both you and Luke, and anything you want to plug.
Yeah, sure.
Where can people find you and whatnot?
I'm on Instagram. It's at Piedmonticus, spelled Piedmonticus, and then my Instagram handle is just Nathanael, or my YouTube handle is just Nathanael Hummel, and you can find the Adventures of Wanderers there. An episode came out last December, and that's kind of setting up where the next season 3, is going to go. I'm hoping to be able to churn stuff out at a little faster rate, but we'll see how it goes. And then
Yeah,
go ahead.
and all, just to let you know and the people know, like, I'll have all the stuff linked in the show notes
Awesome.
description as well, so people will be able to find your stuff pretty easily.
Perfect.
So also, I'm always curious about, like, username. So where'd you get Pede Monticus from? That's Latin, I take it.
Yeah, well, I think Piedmont is kind of like a high hill above a plain, is the actual definition of the term. But growing up, I always called my brother Pede the Weed, and he always hated it. So we ended up coming up with this whole entire kind of like medieval family situation where my brother was the son of the king named Pede, and I was his older brother, Piedmonticus. There was one of our soldiers was the lead of the guard was called Millipede, and then we had a brutish fighter in our clan whose name was Centipede because he had the strength of 100 Pedes. So he just kind of went out of control with this like very goofy story, and for some reason I made Piedmonticus my username, but now it's kind of quintessential to who I am, so I don't think I'll ever change it.
Well, I'm glad I asked, because even now, folks, even his social media handle has an interesting story
I can't get away
behind
from men's adventure fiction.
so
I'm locked into adventure.
I can't get away from spy fiction either. So
Yeah, man.
yeah. Well, it's been great to have you on. I thank you for coming on, and thanks for supporting the books too, and for supporting the podcast as well.
Of course, my
Appreciate
friend.
it.
And thank you so much for being in the men's adventure fiction Discord. We've had such a blast in there. I started that right after we started the podcast, but it isn't specifically for the podcast. There's a channel about that, but it's specifically for people just like you and I who love writing stories that fall under this kind of overarching niche umbrella. So we've got people that love to write sword and sorcery. We got people that love spy fiction, people that love sci-fi. Kind of like runs the gamut. So if you like to write, hop in there. We have a weekly writing prompt going, then it's just a lot of fun. If you want eyes on work,
Yeah.
that's a great place to get in there. So thank you for being part of that.
Absolutely, and thanks for creating it, because I will say that's been one of the, even just to bounce ideas off of other people is good to have. It's good to have. So
yeah, man, it's so fun. It would be so cool if we could work some sort of quarterly magazine or publishing thing out of it. It would be so much fun, but I have no idea how any of that works, but I've really enjoyed being in there.
Well, we should talk offline. I have a few, ideas maybe for something like that. So
very cool.
But folks, thanks for tuning in for this episode. I'll see you all on the live show on Wednesday. Until then, God bless, God save this great nation, and God, freedom, legacy, in that order. Thank you all.
The right to offend is not some pesky little part of freedom of speech that we have to put up with. It is the heart and soul and lungs of freedom of speech. It is the coursing lifeblood of human progress. It is the instigator of liberty and modernity and science and understanding. What a laughing stock today's student leaders are, that they can so casually dismiss the right to be offensive without realizing that their lovely, enlightened lives are the gift of individuals who gave offense. Offensiveness is not just something we have to begrudgingly accept. Offensiveness is the motor of human progress.
Thank you for watching the Whitfield Report live on the Right to Offend Media Network. Make sure to check out Sam's books on Amazon, Audible, and Kindle. You can follow Sam on X at SamW_NGC and the Right to Offend Media Network at RTO Media. Like, comment, subscribe, and share with your friends. And until next time, God bless, God save this great nation. God, freedom, legacy, in that order.